Today I'm giving this table a much needed makeover. I got this table from my aunt for free. She found it on Facebook Marketplace, so of course I had to take it. As you can see, it's in pretty rough condition, but I see a whole lot of potential. I'm actually going to keep this. I'm not going to save it. I'm going to keep it for my booth as a display table. The first thing I need to do is Citristrip that top right off. Now the reason I don't just go in with a sander is because if I sanded it with the 80 grit, it would take me a really long time. It would take me many sanding pads, and this way I can just apply the Citristrip, cover it with plastic wrap, wait an hour, and go do something else while I'm waiting. The reason I cover it in plastic wrap is to prevent that Citristrip from drying out. If you've ever worked with dried up Citristrip, you know it's a nightmare. You want to make sure you keep it like it is right out of that bottle. So even if you wanted to leave it for 24 hours, as long as you have the plastic wrap on there, it keeps most of that moisture in. Now, after about an hour, I come back and I'm going to remove all that Citristrip. I'm using a really narrow scraper here, but you can definitely use a wider one. That'll help this go by much faster. The only reason I am is because I had to throw my other ones. I had to toss them, so I need some new ones. And then because I'm working indoors, I'm using distilled white vinegar for the cleanup. So I just kind of wipe it down first, and then I'm using these like scrubbing pads to get rid of all that excess. Not only do I get rid of all the excess Citristrip on there, but I'm also kind of removing that stain, so that when I do take this out to sand one last time, or because that is the next step in the process, I don't have to sand as much because this little pad takes so much off. So it's super convenient, and I will link it somewhere down below for you. Tons of people keep asking me about these pads. I don't exactly know what they're called. They're just maroon scrubbing pads. So you can look them up on Amazon. They're on Home Depot, but they're amazing. And I like to use the distilled white vinegar because it works great and I can use it indoors and it's not harmful. It doesn't give me a headache. It's just my go-to. So now once it's dried, here's what it looks like. And I take it outside and I'm using 120 grit to just make sure I sand off the rest of those bits of stain that are on there. I want the finish to be nice and even. So I don't go above or below the 120 on here. You could also do a 150. That would have probably worked as well. But I'm using what I have. I have a whole pack of 120s. And then for that curved edge on the table, I have these sanding pads from Total Finish Furnishings, and they are Surf Prep sanding pads. I think it's like $20 for maybe 6 of them, but I don't have a Surf Prep sander, and instead of investing, hundreds of dollars to get one, I just use my mouse sander from Black & Decker, and then I buy the pads, and it works. I don't know, I don't have anything in comparison, but I'm thinking it works just as good because it works very well. I'm sanding this tabletop and I'm starting to think, ooh, this is actually a really good tip. Some people will leave, they'll go, oh, well, I sanded all the stuff off. This is good enough. But you can see these dark spots here. I've already got rid of them over here. I've sanded everything, and then I came back to just kind of fix these they're like little orange spots. It's just not even. If you leave your table with the uneven spots and you put your stain on and or your wash or whatever you're going to do, it's just not going to look as good. Get rid of them. It only takes a few minutes to go over with your sander with a fresh grit and make it really even so that your final outcome is going to be gorgeous. So now I wanted you to see that I did add Dixie Belle's Bonding Boss, which is a blocking primer and an adhesive primer to the wooden areas, not the top, just to the wooden areas that I'm painting over. I used this to avoid any tannins or bleed through coming up through the paint, especially since I'm using a light color. For this project, I'm going to use the new color in the Dixie Belle Chalk Mineral Paint line called Magnolia. When I'm painting with Dixie Belle's Chalk Mineral Paint, I'm always using a water mister in one hand and my paintbrush in the other. So I'm gonna take my paint, just dip the edges. You don't need much. I'm gonna spray my piece of furniture. Everyone always asks, why are you using water? And it's because it helps to spread the paint and it reduces brush strokes. You get so much more out of it and it just looks so good. It's so easy to apply this way. A lot of paints, if you mix them with water, it kind of separates the paint, not this one. This brings it all together. If you're blending, it really helps blend. I love using my water mister with this paint. I find it gives me the most professional results. And like you could see, it looks like there's brush strokes, but once it dries and I do my second coat, that's gonna go away. And for the most part, like you can already see over here, my brush strokes just kind of disappearing. Now for the bottom of the table and the edge around the top, I'm going to use Dixie Belle's clear coat in flat. And that's because I don't want any of that yellowing to come up in tannins. And I know you're going to say, well, you use the Dixie Belle's bonding gloss, but still, I've been painting furniture for 9 years, and anything that I can do extra to avoid yellowing, I do it because it's kind of devastating once, you see yellow coming through. And I know that you're going to say, well, I thought that if you prep your piece properly, the tannins don't come through. That is true, yes, but your water-based sealers are water-based, and water activates tannins. So something I'd like to say, which I don't hear a lot, is every piece of furniture is different. Even when you follow all the rules, stuff still happens. So I do everything I can and everything I know and all the tips, I try to pull them out to avoid any mishaps. Now for the top, I'm doing a paint wash with the new color Ecru. This one has a little bit more yellow in it, and I think it would just go really well with the creamy bottom. So it's about a 60-40 mix. 60% of paint to 40% water. I wanted this to be a little bit more heavy on the top. I don't want it to be completely transparent, but I do want it to be transparent. So 60-40 is the right one for me. Most of the time I do 50-50, but I do want this to be a little bit more heavy on the paint. And that's because I want it to be white. I do. It's going in my booth and it's gonna hold jewelry and candles, and I know the look I'm going for. So 60-40, that's what works. So you apply it, and then you take a lint-free cloth or any kind of cloth, and you're just gonna wipe it back. And I added 3 coats. I wait about an hour in between the coats. And I continue that process on the other side of the table. And I know it looks rough right now. It looks kind of scary, but once you put the sealer on, it looks so much better. That sealer brings that paint back to life. So for this, I'm using Dixie Belle's Gator hide because it's a high traffic area sealer, and that's what I put in my sprayer. Now, I would highly recommend maybe 3 coats of the flat if you're worried about it yellowing. You remember what we started with? And here it is today. I hope you enjoyed this video or found it helpful. If you did, I'd love it if you hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll see you next time.